Press start, mate. Let's get cracking.
Yeah, let's get cracking.
How have you been? Sorry, our conversation got cut off yesterday. Tech issues.
That's fine. I've actually found lots of people are having tech issues in April.
Really?
I connected with a client this morning. Well, two clients. The first one was late. That wasn't really a tech issue, but the second one just could not enter the Zoom meeting, and I was the one who'd issued the invitation, and I'd somehow done something that every time they tried to join the Zoom meeting, it said I was already busy with another meeting, which was a meeting they were meant to be in.
Wow, that would have been fun.
Yeah, if you're into astrology, and I don't want to turn this into an astrology podcast because we'll lose four of the eight people that listen to this podcast. Apparently, it's a really bad month for electronic communication.
Is it like Mercury retrograde?
Yeah, that's happening, and something else is happening at the same time.
Nothing
Anyway.
to do with the eclipse? There was an eclipse, but I
Well,
don't think
yeah,
we saw it.
there is the eclipse as well. But yeah, I think it's to do with Mercury's absence, which represents communication. So when Mercury is not dominant. Anyway, even if you don't believe that stuff, I've encountered a lot of technical issues this month. So
Yeah,
yeah, um, yeah, I was told off. I
you were
got told off.
reprimanded.
What's that?
You were reprimanded.
Yeah, I was reprimanded the other day because of something I'd failed to do, which is interesting. It's interesting to me because I have a very utopian view of work, which is I would perform my role
Mm.
to the best of my ability. In fact, I will go beyond the best of my ability and push myself to deliver value to clients. But I bring a utopian mindset to my work that I should only be judged on my work.
Mm.
And that is a utopian mindset because that's not how human beings are wired. It's not just what you do, it's how you make people feel or their perception of you. So, you might be in the top 1% or something of your role or whatever it is you're doing performance wise. But if people perceive that you feel a different set of rules apply to you, or you sometimes forget basic courtesies. Um, all the good work you can do, even if clients love you, that can just be put aside and you're judged solely on, your slip up. And so I just have to make peace with that because I just understand that that's part of being a human being. And so sometimes, sometimes I feel, well, I've done this, I did that, but that can all be wiped out if I forget, you know, to tell someone that I won't be somewhere or something.
So I think the question is then, do you think that the judgment or feedback was fair or warranted? Or could it have been handled better?
Yeah, excellent question. Oh, by the way, I've noticed because I've listened to a lot of podcasts, I hear
Mm-hmm.
I hear that phrase excellent question when someone's asked something, and quite often that's the response before their answer, excellent question. And I've heard it so much that I feel that perhaps the phrase is overused because not all questions are excellent. But Kat, your question is excellent because it's making me think about my reaction. Yeah, I think the way it was framed could have perhaps been handled differently, but quite often when someone's upset at you, though, something else is going on as well, and they might not actually. Did I
Start
drop
again.
out?
A little bit, yeah.
I dropped out.
What were you saying? Start from if someone's upset.
Yeah, quite often if someone is giving you feedback on something and they're upset about something you've done, sometimes you can read between the lines and you realize they're actually probably upset about something else you've done.
Projecting?
Yeah, but the thing that they really want to talk to you about is it's too hot a topic or it's too painful a topic. And so then they'll choose something else which appears quite minor
Mm,
to criticize you over. It's just human nature because, difficult conversations, critical conversations, they're not easy to have.
that's actually ironic. So what do you think was the actual underlying issue then? If the issue that your tardiness or your lack of communication was the prompt, what was the underlying issue, do you think?
Well, how deep do you want me to go?
Let's go deep.
Okay. So it's exceedingly difficult for any business owner, anyone who has people report to them. It is exceedingly difficult to create, I want to say create, to foster a performance-based culture where everyone is going beyond the 9 to 5. I don't mean going beyond in the sense of working more hours, but, doing the best, delivering a level of service to clients, a level of creativity that is beyond just, punching the clock.
Mm,
And that is a challenge to foster that sort of culture. And so it requires so many steps. And so I think what was happening there is some people had ticked the box by attending the meeting, but then me uh, not putting in my apology beforehand, it could be interpreted as undermining that performance culture that someone is trying to foster, but it's not actually undermining the performance culture. It is, what am I trying to say? If all we're doing is ticking boxes and attending meetings, it seems like on paper that we're
mm,
doing everything, but a performance culture actually requires even more than that.
mm,
And that's a very delicate balance. It's very difficult to foster. And so me forgetting to put in my apology, it could be interpreted as, oh, well, you're undoing all the good work we're doing. But, it my work hasn't suffered. I mean, to take the criticism on board, to own it,
oh, absolutely.
there's this radical idea of if anything goes wrong or you're upset about something, just act like it's all your fault. I mean, you're not happy with your work or you're not happy with your salary or whatever is bugging you in life. I read this somewhere the other day. If you sit down and go, you know what, I'm unhappy about this, but it's all my fault. Even if it's not all your fault, you saying it's all your fault opens up this space in your life. It's a form of freedom because then if you convince yourself it's all your fault, really sounds like you're brainwashing yourself. But what you're doing is you're going, well, if it's all my fault, I'm going to be the focus point, the nexus of positive change that can happen in my life because it's going to come through me. I'm going to take responsibility. Even if someone did something else and perhaps it was their fault, to then own that, it's actually empowering. It doesn't sound like it's empowering because it almost sounds neurotic. It almost sounds like you're blaming yourself for everything. You're not blaming yourself. You're just taking responsibility for what set of actions are going to follow to improve your situation. Because if you're taking like a radical level of responsibility, you're then not putting it on anyone else. Oh, if only such and such a person did this, I would be in a better place. Whereas if I move through the world as in this is all my fault, it's all on my shoulders, then I'm relying on myself to make the change for something better to come.
Mm, I
What do
really like
you,
that.
yeah, you like it?
I do because, and for 2 points. I feel that accountability and taking responsibility for your what happened to you, or what's happening in your life, or things that you want to change. I see that as the generational gap, even in the way that my son speaks, what he's turning 16. I'm not sure what gen he is. I think he's Z or whatever it is. It's always, and no, actually that's just where I see it, but I see it in all ages. But it's like it's never your fault. So it's just like, how are you ever going to change something until you become accountable for that particular issue? So I love that. And I think I've shared with you before, like spiritually, when you look at anything that happens to you in your life is not it's the one common denominator is you, right? So whatever situation it is, like if something keeps happening to you over and over again, it's a different person. What's the common thing or factor in all of those situations? It's you. It's how you've reacted, or how you haven't, or yeah, how you've have framed that situation in your mind. So I really like that. And the other point that kind of what sparked me was, I read this. I've seen it a few times in content in my feed, and it's funny how we end up talking about it. But it's like when you're talking about that performance culture, like there's no KPI or metric that says, oh, the way that you appear in a meeting or in a group, all hands, is a performance indicator. It's like an unsaid rule. And it goes to show as well that the people, and I've seen this, in, as I said, in content, it's like the people who get promoted quickest are the ones who are seen. They're not even necessarily the hardest worker, or necessarily produce the best results, but they're the ones who are seen to be doing something. And it's just funny how, again, it's all that human behavior, and how sometimes the way that we look at performance is so counterintuitive. And I think there's like an old way and a new way of looking at how to motivate people. And I see that, not pretending, but that ticking of the boxes and just being there is just such a weird idea to me. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean? It's
yes.
just like,
It's what I mean, I think it's been described by other people as presenteeism. I'm
yes.
present, I'm here. And I think with remote work, this is going to be a challenge for younger people because perhaps it's harder for them to be seen if they're only dialing into meetings. I don't know. Like I look at my daughter's experience. She's doing year 12. Sure, there's a lot of electronic work where she uses her PC to upload assignments and things like that, but she does have the face-to-face time with her favorite teachers who also serve as her mentors. And
Mm,
so she's getting a lot more interaction, a lot more feedback. Like, for instance, she came home the other day because she's at the age where she's thinking about what do I study after year 12.
mm,
And I thought she was setting like the bar a bit low for herself because I think she's quite intelligent. She's quite switched on. But sometimes it's hard to hear that from your parent because, oh, that's mum or dad talking.
yeah, of
But
course.
she came home the other day and she was quite energized because her teacher had noticed the same thing I had noticed. I hadn't even spoken to her teacher about it, but her teacher was encouraging to set her sights higher because she thought my daughter was more capable of it. And that was gratifying for me to hear. And it sort of energized my daughter as well because now she was considering broadening her horizons post year 12. But that in-person interaction, like looking back in a few years, maybe that in-person interaction was one of the markers on the road of her life and career that ended up making a big difference.
Mm,
And so younger people today in the corporate environment, like on the one hand, like people get promoted who get seen, and that's possibly an injustice
Mm,
because they might not be the best performers. But then on the other hand, maybe someone who could end up being one of the best performers and go on to great things could benefit from a bit more attention from people rather than just their name being ticked off because they attended the Teams call or the Google Hangout. It's very complex.
it is. It is very complex. And I'm just trying to find the post again. I saw another share on LinkedIn, and it was like, just keep your head down and work hard, and then you'll get the recognition. And like, I think the post was trying to reflect on the fact that that isn't true. And then another person who I follow, her name is Laura Nguyen. It's Vietnamese. She said, yeah, it was the worst. It just set you up for burnout, essentially, to work that way. And that's a cultural thing too. Like, women feel that way. Maybe people of Asian background. That's certainly something I've, seen, or it's just a belief that's sort of embedded through what I've experienced. But yeah, it's just like, okay, if you work really hard and you cross all your T's and dot your I's, you will get that recognition or promotion. But that's not the case. It's that being present, even when you're not doing something of high value, because of human nature and because of the way that relationships work, just being there, and for example, and you're not and someone else is, that's going to reflect on the perception of you and your performance, which I don't necessarily think is fair. It's just a bias that exists. um
I suppose this is part of the reason why the idea of being a solopreneur is so enticing to me because let's say I was a company of one and my meetings and interaction with people were all client facing.
mhm,
Hypothetically, I am being seen in the sense that I'm meeting them while it may not be in person because they might be in a different continent, whether it's a Zoom meeting, and if I was actually delivering value for that client and making a difference to their business, like the gaze is on me, I'm being seen.
mhm.
Whereas the more complex an organization, if there's a strata of middle management, it's harder to get seen because your achievements, you might be working 70 or 80 hours a week, your achievements might get hidden because of the management structure.
Yes.
Whereas like more contact, more direct contact with your stakeholders and your customers, then it's easier to be seen because there's really no hiding behind process or management. It's like, well, what have you done for me? How
Mm,
how have you moved the needle for me? If you move the needle for them, you're already being seen. But not everyone can be a solopreneur. But I guess that's why meeting with clients, I find it so energizing because it's like the old saying, like the dog catcher has to catch dogs. It's like, how are you, Tim? How many dogs have we caught today? I don't, it's an illustration, it's a metaphor. I don't catch dogs. I like dogs. I'm not saying people should go out and catch dogs, but do you know what I mean? It's all about, well, what have we achieved?
yeah, yeah. That brings us to the argument of like, well, my experience has always been in smaller teams. So even if it was a smaller team within a larger organization, an enterprise organization. So there's literally nowhere to hide. And I don't know why that is. Um, but yeah, so I
Sorry,
feel
you
like
say there's nowhere to hide on a smaller team. Is that what you're
smaller
saying?
team,
Yes.
correct, yeah. So whilst I've worked in larger corporations, I've worked in a small team. So I've always had that small environment. So you do get, it's easier to be seen. You have a lot more to do, obviously. And the learning curve can be quite steep, but it's quite rewarding because it can be faster. But at this point of my career, you then start to look at, okay, I can do a lot of these things, or a lot of, I would call my, I can call myself a generalist as an example. We can use that as an example. But where do I actually want to niche down? And if you are working in a small team, or if you're a one-person marketing team, it actually becomes very difficult to do that, because there's literally like you literally have to do everything. So that's a really interesting point you make. And also, working in a small to medium business, or working for yourself, or becoming a manager, or staying an individual contributor. These are all sort of questions, I guess, and forks in the road that people will encounter in their professional life at some point. Um, just all really interesting. And it's just what is interesting is how you take those experiences. For example, being, the, I guess, the negative feedback from not being present. Um, and then you kind of like marry that to, okay, it is a small bump in the road, really. But then it becomes like all of these smaller experiences become like, I guess, a bigger lesson in like your approach to your career, I guess. And what brings you joy in your everyday life? Is it having that middle management structure? Do you enjoy, like, some people are great managers. I
Mm.
haven't met many of them, but there are some great managers out there, and they're the ones who stand out to me. Um, but yeah, so it's just like, what do you value? What brings you joy in your work? Everybody has financial obligations, so what is it that you're looking for in your career? I think that's kind of where I'm going with our
Yeah.
conversation.
So you use the term, I think you said speed bump, and did you, I guess the upside of encountering a speed bump, um, if you're driving too fast and your car gets airborne and then it
Oh.
rolls over and bursts into flames. And I guess the upside of encountering an obstacle or a speed bump is it can often clarify
Mm.
what it is you really want to do,
Mm-hmm.
and the things you possibly don't want to do.
Correct.
So the whole world of presenteeism and getting ahead because you're more visible than other people. I think professionally, for anyone, well, for me, is it feels more gratifying to be seen when I'm doing work which is closer to value creation
Mm-hmm.
for the business's customers, because when you look back on a quarter or half year or like a full 12 months, if you're able to say, oh, I really did like create value for people, I created value for clients, and then I was recognized for that, I think that would be a greater level of satisfaction than saying, well, I I attended every meeting and every offsite and I was recognized for that. I mean, maybe you do want to get recognized for that.
Yeah.
Everyone's wired differently. But for me, my particular psychological makeup, I much prefer being recognized for, you know, helping a client with an issue or helping
Mm.
them achieve something. Yeah, like I was talking to another client this morning, and he was saying he used to work in finance, which he enjoyed, but he was then promoted into an operational role.
Mm.
And the pressure of the operational role is it never lets up.
Mm-hmm.
And even he felt when he'd achieved something, there could be something just over the horizon, which is a challenge or a problem to solve, and it never stops. And while that was challenging, he said that when he worked in finance, he would often come up with things or a better way to do things, but like because there was so many other people that had to approve it, it never got off the ground, or
Mm.
it was hard to get credit or recognition for some of the things. But now, even though the new role is so much more pressure, like it's all on him. He's like he might have been in the back row before, but now he's at the front of the ship and his
Mm-hmm.
hand is on the helm. So there's direct feedback in the sense every decision he makes, he can see the outcome. And so while it was a lot of pressure, it seemed to me what he was saying, it felt more rewarding to him because he wasn't locked away in a silo. He was where all the action was. He
Hmm.
is where all the action is. Yeah.
That's really interesting. It kind of reminds me of a post that I saw like months ago, and it's not, I mean, it's not original. It's around the idea that your mindset is everything, right? So just reflecting back on our conversation and even reflecting back on that story, I personally think that it's more than about what your mind says. It's actually about, so where do your values sit? They probably don't sit in your mind. It's where we perceive as our heart. That's our, our feeling, or like our motive, like it's who we are. It's what makes, because we can sit here all day and look at something at every angle and argue it, and anybody could from that logical perspective. But what's going to drive what you do and how you react, or your direction and whatever, is how you feel about something. So for me, like I used to think that, yeah, just change your mindset, but it's actually really just connecting to how you feel as a person and understand what is important to you as a person, and how you want to treat other people. Perhaps like, like using that story of like being at the helm rather than, having this idea and being in a silo. It's like it's like, and obviously as part of being in operations, you're talking to a lot more people. You're not just in finance. So for me, he's a very like he was getting closer to his values of like being in and amongst the action of people, and the stakeholder management, versus being, the finance individual contributor who did really well at XYZ. So yeah, I'm just kind of not arguing, but I poo-pooing the fact it's not, mindset is everything, because it's not. It's really about how you feel. And you can change it with like, you can change it by trying to change the way you think about something, but it's really probably has to go deeper than that, and having like a deeper understanding of why you feel that way, and then being able to shift. And it's around that accountability point that you were making earlier too. Like, what did I do and why do I feel this way based on that action? Great topic. Love all that stuff.
Yeah, so it's kind of telling to me that in the business world, uh, I should say, you rarely hear much about the heart. Like it's all about the mind, because perhaps when you talk about the heart, the business world perhaps feels that's a fuzzy concept. But
Mm.
what you're saying, that the heart is much more than just a pump that circulates blood. It's the seat of motivation.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. It's who you are, really. It's like how you feel about something, like I don't know, it's all folklore, but I don't know, was it well, Steve Jobs did it too. I believe he also went to India and did, after maybe after or before he was fired from Apple CEO role, he went and did the whole exposure to like, Eastern cultures and spirituality. And I think even Bezos did too.
really?
I believe so. Like that's sort of that, again, it's all folklore, so who knows what's real. But when people like it also explains how very successful people are unhappy. And because like when you look at their lives, yeah, they're really they've achieved this, they've got accolades for that, they've got whatever, but they aren't fulfilled. And why is that? Is it like, if they focused on their mind, would they still be fulfilled? No, because they're not looking at what drives like their values. And the values don't sit in your logical mind, they sit somewhere a bit deeper and who you are. So that's why I just think like all of it is so interesting to me. And I think that's why I really like having this podcast, so, and having guests as well, because it's really about everyone's unique selling proposition is your story. No one else has your story. And it's so that's actually, it's not like whether you've got a master's or whether you did what you did on paper. It's just how you're able to achieve those goals in the way that you do. And in the same way that there's great managers who are great middle managers and don't, make that leap into leadership roles because that's what they're really good at, and um that's where they want to stay, and that's where, their expertise lies. So it's all very it's an interesting angle that we're discussing today.
So I wonder if that is a common element of people's stories who have achieved things.
Yeah,
Got out, they somehow got outside of their own head.
yeah, yeah. Just saw they zoomed out somehow. Whether they zoomed out because they had to, like they might have, hit rock bottom or something like that, and they had to really reflect, or they were forced to reflect. But yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I have this idea that our conscious mind, my conscious mind, because I can't speak of anyone else's mind, it's like conquered territory. Like I think it belongs to me, but it's actually been infiltrated by other ideas that aren't mine, and I think they're mine. But because I've become so used to living with those ideas in my head, there's a sometimes there's a disconnect between those ideas and what I really want. Because I
Hmm.
think those ideas are the things I want, but perhaps they're not.
Well, yeah, I definitely agree with that. There's a level of programming at all levels, whether it's through entertainment or through your how you were brought up. Um, yeah, I definitely think there is that level of you think it's your like there's no original idea, really.
Mm,
It's in this world. It's just there are very few people that have the gall or the tenacity or the resilience to really push through and make it real and make it a reality, right? So that's the difference. Like, and that's what I'm saying. It's not just about being smartest in the room. I think there's something a lot more to it than that.
yeah, and the feeling of even if you're just briefly brushing up against it, the feeling of actually achieving something or bringing yourself to a different place, the sense of reward or the positive feeling from that, to me, feels a lot more engaging than, you talked about entertainment and watching a Netflix show. Uh, when I was younger, like entertainment and movies and television was everything to me.
Yes.
Loved it. But now, I mean, partly age, partly mindset, uh, it's just not as engaging anymore because I feel like I'm investing time in someone else's story, have the same allure or appeal to me as it once did.
Yeah. I think it's again, you use mindset, but remember the experience of going to the movies. It's like totally different to just turning Netflix on and binging out. Like it's just a different experience, I think, for us. I mean, I remember going. I remember what was it called? Movie marathons. I don't know if you had those, but
Yeah.
movie marathons and things like, that was like not normal. Whereas now it's like, you're binging, you're at home. It's like it feels like a drain on your time more than you're getting a lot out of the story. And I think that's just a shift in content and like the democratization of, well, I don't even think I said that right, but anyone now can create content and distribute it because of social media. So I
Mm,
think that access, and it's that argument, if everyone's doing it, what makes it good? And it's the same argument that we look at for, AI content versus creative original human made content, which not all human made content is creative or original. So it's just a change, like a shift of what we perceive to be like part of the experience. That's how I feel about it.
yeah, I mean, going to a single movie or a movie marathon in an actual movie house,
Different.
different, like almost felt religious because you're going to a place dedicated to one thing.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
all the most vivid movie experiences in my mind all involved sitting in a theater, not looking at my laptop screen.
Well, now I because I have a smart TV, it's just like watching TV. So,
Yeah,
I mean, there is benefits to that. I have having a young child. I actually
of course. Yeah.
today. It's his birthday.
6.
Yeah. Oh.
Happy birthday, Cat Junior.
Valor. Cat Junior. I think he's a lot more like his dad, to be honest. He's very active. It's very tiring. But so yeah, there is benefit as with anything, there's benefits to having more accessibility at home, for some of us.
Yeah, you
Mhm.
mentioned everyone can create content. I saw something that kind of blew my mind.
Mhm.
Someone on LinkedIn described, yeah, there's a big controversy. Controversy. There's a LinkedIn controversy. We have the geopolitical strife in the Middle East. We have the Baltimore Bridge collapse, and then we have the third big one, LinkedIn controversy. Which one's the most important? Yeah, there's controversy at the moment because for certain LinkedIn users, they have a button that enables you to use generative AI to reply
Oh
to
yes, the
comments on
beta.
posts.
Let me see if I have it.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I have it.
I haven't seen it in comments, but I have seen it in my posting, which
Yeah,
is
so
awful.
they rolled it out to generate a post
Right.
with AI, but now some users have a button like use AI to reply to the comment. And people are noticing it because a lot of the AI generated comments, they have a certain feel to them, and now people are identifying them. And so now they're shaming the people who are using generative AI to leave comments on people's posts. And it's a pretty interesting subject, but someone said something about it. They said, ever feel like some LinkedIn comments are wearing too much chat GPT makeup? I've never seen that before, that phrase, chat GPT makeup. It's great to have makeup. It is not great if it doesn't fit your style. And then the rest of the
That
post,
is also true.
yeah, the rest of the post is actually, it's not anti-chat GPT. This lady, Claire, who wrote the post, is like, I rarely wear real makeup, but I love GPT makeup. And anyway, she went on to describe how, she uses it to generate ideas or to write copy, and then she goes in and changes it to make it sound more like her. But I just thought that was an interesting concept. It's like applying makeup. Or maybe it's like applying skin moisturizer. I don't know because I don't wear makeup. Maybe I should wear makeup. Look how red my face is because I need to tone down. I look like a beetroot on Zoom. Missed. Fix your feed with Cat and Mr. Tomato. But I thought, well, to me, that's an example of what people do best, which is being creative. And I thought that was a creative interpretation of the pros of using generative AI. It's not like it's a hammer to hit every nail you see. This is like something that could enhance my presence by like helping me phrase something. I'm not using it to write everything, I think. Anyway, I really like that idea of wearing ChatGPT makeup. So the next time we connect, I might be wearing some ChatGPT makeup.
And it's actually funny that people are up in arms about these comments because it wasn't that long ago that to kind of game the algorithm, people would use, oh, thanks so and so when whatever. And but really the best practice or would be, and you can see it a lot in the really good like the best conversations are in the comment threads. So,
Yeah.
if you want to, I think there was and like, it was really obvious that certain LinkedIn influencers were they had their own engagement pods because
Right.
it was, you know what I mean? Like, so it was really obvious they were trying to get more traction by
Because
it. Yeah.
comments was boosting the reach of the
Yeah.
posts of their friends and colleagues. Yeah.
So I just don't really see much difference. Like, I don't
Y-
know why
Yeah,
it's.
so there's sort of like a purity or an orthodoxy. So it's like if I leave a comment on someone's post because I enjoyed the post and then I try to make my comment spicy or a bit controversial, which I did this morning. I left a
Was
spicy
it the
comment.
Grumpy Cat one? Oh no, that
Oh
was.
no, that's another thing. That's
No.
another bit of spice. But analyzing my intention, well, there's several things going on. I'm rewarding the author of the post in a way because I'm letting them know I receive value from it by taking the time to craft a comment. But B, I'm wanting my comment to be noticed. So I'm crafting it in a way that's beyond, oh, good job, I agree. I'm doing more than that. And so C, perhaps in the back of my mind, uh, I'm hoping other people will notice that comment. And if I leave enough of those comments, that's more attention on me. So am I acting from a place of purity because
Mm.
I've just drafted it in Notepad? Uh, am I somehow being dishonest if I've put ChatGPT makeup on it? Because like we're trying to achieve the same thing, aren't we?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. It's like, well,
Yeah, there's
I
this,
don't,
oh man,
it's very weird.
there's this crazy thing going on at the moment. You'll probably encounter it with your children. So my daughter yesterday told me that two of her friends in year 12, both of their parents had received phone calls from the school because the teacher, I think it was a science
Mm.
subject, had called the parents and said, the assignment your child has handed in, we like ran it through some sort of software
Oh, yes.
and uh, it told us that,
It
most
was,
of it came from ChatGPT or whatever.
yeah.
And so one of her friends was like mortified and she was so upset. She was bawling about it because from her point of view, she hadn't done it. She had gone to websites to find the information. And I was just wondering about the whole paradox of this because
Yes.
you and I exist in a world where people are using these tools to be more efficient or for creative brainstorming or
For
whatever.
research,
Yeah, research. I often use
there's some great
Microsoft
GPTs for research.
Copilot to find
Mm.
information and collate it for me. But now we're sending out our children into the world with this mindset that it's actually cheating to use these tools. But even if they haven't used them, like in the case of one of her friends, I don't know what the situation was with the other one, but if her first friend is adamant about she didn't use it, I can see this issue that if she's taken a chunk of information from a website and if that website was authored with a generative AI tool, she's being penalized secondhand for it. And,
Oh,
and
yes.
how accurate are these tools that analyze whether you've used ChatGPT? It's very strange to me because we're criticizing the younger generation for using a tool to generate content, but we're using the teachers and the education department is using a similar tool to give them the answer
On that.
on that. So
Mm.
they're sort of they're in the mindset that they're trying to criticize because now they're relying on a tool to generate an answer for them. The teacher has a student use this tool to create this content, and the tool the teacher is using may not be accurate,
Oh, 100%.
which I read somewhere. So it's just I don't know, it seems deeply ironic to me that teachers are relying on generative AI tools to tell them whether students have used generative AI.
This
So
is, yeah,
it seems weird to me.
it shouldn't. It says a lot about the education system, to be
Yeah.
honest. And anything that, and that's, this is a whole different podcast, but it, it's just anything that has that much bureaucracy, anything government related, like education, healthcare. It is so back in time. It is just like it floors me sometimes. So yeah, that's just, I could probably talk about that for half an hour. But yeah, I completely agree. It's like, how do we then change the curriculum to, like, I mean, if it's just them regurgitating information, like, I don't even understand. Like, do you know what I mean? It's like, okay, it's like, if there's so much information out there, why are you being assessed on how well you can bring that information back up when there's tools out there that can do it a million times faster than you? What is
Yeah.
the real value then? The real value is like what you would actually do with the opinion.
Yeah.
And the, like, it just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah. I mean, I used to love watching Star Trek, particularly Star Trek The Next Generation. I mean, that was my jam. And
Mm,
the computer on the Enterprise, like while people on the bridge of the Enterprise had terminals,
mm.
when they wanted an answer, they just addressed the computer. Computer, please tell
Yeah.
me such and such.
Yep.
And the people in the show weren't portrayed as idiots. They were
No.
like the top of their field, but they were using the computer, which, was fictitious, but
Yeah.
it would
Well,
just give them an answer instantly. And I just think the negative attitudes towards these tools from adults, even outside of school, like on LinkedIn, just because someone is using it in a ham-fisted way, it seems unimaginative to then condemn all uses of it, because really, shouldn't we be preparing the younger generation for a world where they are actually interacting with these tools, and the people who learn how to speak to these tools efficiently or even creatively, they're going to get further than the people who just think it's like the work of the devil or something.
mm, yes, agreed.
Yeah. Yeah. Please unpack everything I said then. Um,
No, I definitely agree. I don't, yeah, it's a hard one. I mean, oh my, I wish I had like all the money in the world to send my children to, like, these more progressive schools that really promote out of the box thinking, as opposed to, like, a lot of the things that we talk about today is just like the box ticking. And he was able to, I don't know what was one of the things I saw in a assessment rubric, like able to, I don't know, regurgitate what XYZ is to, is that really like understanding? I mean, that, and this is coming from someone who's had a master, who's studied to get their masters, like, you really at a young age, like, should be getting children to like push them to think outside of this box that we're trying to teach them. It's like, well, here's this theory,
mm,
pull it apart. Why is it not relevant anymore? And if, like, you know what I mean, like, instead of like, oh yeah, this is what always happens because this exists. It's like we need to teach our children to ask questions of things and like challenge the status quo, because it's those people that do challenge the status quo that make the impact. And not everyone is made up to be that person, but I think that's, that critical thinking element is so important. And it's not taught enough. Um,
I also, boy, this is going to sound so misanthropic, what I'm about to say, but I sense, I'm quite introverted, so
mm-hmm.
this is going to color everything I'm about to say, but I see the appeal and I've experienced the appeal of working with generative AI tools because they don't berate you or criticize you for your questions. Okay,
Mm.
maybe it spits out rubbish, maybe it's no good, but there's an openness to it. And of course, it all depends on how the language model has been trained and what data it has access to. But if people in 2024 and beyond, if you work in marketing or whatever, they tend to gravitate towards what we perceive as more authentic content. Like I like reading things from people that are presenting more of themselves rather than a polished message because I sense more of the authentic voice of that person is coming through on their content. But if they've used ChatGPT in a way to get to their authentic voice even quicker, does it make them any less authentic?
Exactly.
Just because they're using the best of technology? I don't think so.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean that has been my goal with training GPTs. It's just so that it can actually talk in a way that's a reflection of me or this brand or this person that I'm writing for. Um, yeah, that's always been the challenge. And that's actually what I feel um makes like that content good or bad. It's not that it was done faster, it's the fact that it's so aligned with what you actually prompted it to do. Which is hard. That actually even takes more time, and we've discussed that before. So
Yeah, that
yeah.
is hard. One thing, one example, one implementation of this is of getting an AI process to share someone's authentic voice. One of the best implementations I've seen of it, and this is not a paid promotion. This is just a tool I use, Otter, Otter AI, which is transcription software.
Mm-hmm.
It's now rolled out something called Otter Assistant. So I might have hours and hours of recorded conversations with an executive client, and it's transcribed them all. So I can go into each
Mm.
conversation, look at timestamps. I mean, I even run our podcast through it. Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
Timestamps, search for words and find them. But now it has this added level, which makes it even more useful. I don't even have to search the conversation. I just pull up a chat window and I go at Otter, what did Kat say about presenteeism? Oh,
Okay.
what? Oh, no, I can go further than that. I can go, Otter, based on this conversation, what are Kat's thoughts about connecting with what you really want to do in your career? I could be that open-ended, and rather than it just present a chunk of you said and then it writes a summary of what it believes you think about the subject, which isn't a copy and paste of the transcription. It's actually using the conversations as its language model to answer the
Oh,
question
that's
about you.
interesting.
And I find it infinitely helpful because if I'm struggling to write something for a client, in the past, I could spend hours trawling through all those transcriptions, which was
Mhm.
already a time saver because before Otter, I would have to write down everything they said. It does that automatically, but there was still the time hit of like trying to work out the best
What?
thing to say in the client's
Mm.
content. But now I simply ask it and it will give me a summary, which then I will use that as inspiration or a foundation of ChatGPT makeup to write something. And to me, that just blows my mind because I'm collecting data in the form of conversations with clients, but now there's an AI assistant that has access to those conversations. It's secure. They're not accessible to anyone else except me logging in, but it's really helpful. And going back to you saying it's a struggle to get a generative AI process to write something in someone's tone of voice. Well, perhaps this isn't tone of voice, but it knows it's a pretty good approximation of what the person you've interviewed thinks about a subject because it analyzes everything they say.
I'm just trying to log into my Otter to see. If I have access to that. It's not being friendly to me. It's making me go through configurations or something.
It's called
What?
it's
Oh,
new
Otter
it's
AI
new.
chat.
Yeah, ask anything in Otter Chat.
Mm.
Summarize my calls from last week. How should I prepare for my one-on-one today? What's the status of my Acme deal? What was the sentiment in the last all hands meeting? That's interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. I'm still not sentiment in like like that's been around for so long. I still think that is a really hard one to actually nab. But I mean, I could be biting my words because if you just look at, have you heard of the show Top Boy? It's on Netflix.
Top Boy? No.
Yeah, it's a
Is that
bit.
like Top Gun?
No, it's like it's an English-based show about a low socio-economic kind of background. It's like the not the projects. What do they call them in
Oh, like a
England?
housing.
Housing, that's it.
Yeah.
And it's about, the youths and like obviously drug dealing
Mm.
and things like that. But if you look at like that kind of slang, and not that everyone speaks that way, but even if you look at Australian slang, it was just humans communicate so funny in really funny ways, like, and things that we say can be taken as a negative connotation, but it would take like it would take a lot of training and understanding of like colloquial terms and slang and how we yeah I still don't vibe sentiment analysis. I don't like if anyone promises really good sentiment analysis on.
Yeah. So all those examples in the software that it said it could do, I haven't asked it any of
Mm.
that.
Oh no, that's just my
Yeah.
that's just my opinion. I'm just sharing my opinion, Kim.
Yeah, yeah. So, like what you're saying, if the colloquialisms or the idioms or the peculiar way of talking about something, perhaps a generative AI model would struggle to understand that because, like,
Oh,
if
it would
some,
learn. It would
yeah,
learn. Yeah.
like if I said, oh, I jumped on Zoom with Kat and boy, she said some sick things. Like,
Yeah.
and what I mean is like, yeah, it was really good,
Yeah,
but perhaps
exactly.
it would interpret it as like there was a problem with Kat or something. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Anyways, I think we been talking for an hour.
Yeah, we have. Oh, this was the seventh episode of Fix Your Feed. Seven. Peace.
Peace.
Not that one. Peace. Victory.